Hello and welcome to Token TV Plus. I'm Tom White, as ever. We're joined by Crypto C, and joining us all the way from just outside Philadelphia in the USA, I am delighted to say that we've got Snappy with us from PIVX. Snappy, how are you?
Hey, Tom. Hey, Crypto C. Thanks for having me on the show.
No, thank you very much for coming on. And Crypto C, everything okay?
Yep. Good. All good.
Right, well, let's crack straight onto this, because it's Snappy we want to hear from this week, because we're so happy to have you on. Just tell us a bit about your background, Snappy.
Sure. So I was born and raised stateside, although I am a dual Aussie-American. My father was born and raised in Melbourne. Grew up, as I said, outside of Philadelphia. Went away for university and other educations and arrived back. My background heralds pretty much across the board, from academic research and going through uni and ending up a doctorate, finishing a doctorate degree at some point, and then cycling around into education technology. And right around that time is when I really started following my gut. That's probably the best way to say it, is I started believing in myself and following myself and what I wanted. And that's actually when I jumped into crypto. I had been reading a little bit about this thing called Bitcoin, and prior to that, there were two fairly big instances in my life where I had this gut sense about something, and I didn't act on it, right? And so one of them was actually getting into Tesla before Tesla was even anything. My education and experiences had kind of put that in front of me, and I was like, oh man, I have an opportunity to buy Tesla stock. And never acted on it, right? So it's kind of like saying, you had the chance to get into the biggest ICO ever, but before it actually took off, right? So, and there was one other, and so
there's one question that's kind of on my mind as someone who's not as much of an expert as you and Crypto C. Can you just tell us, what is a privacy coin?
Sure. So if you look at the landscape of cryptocurrencies, hailing from the nexus point of Bitcoin and moving forward into what we have now in that landscape. So privacy coins is a very, very broad category to describe cryptocurrency projects or blockchains that provide some modicum of what could be considered privacy for their users. And then you can divvy that up, right? There's identity privacy, there's ledger privacy, meaning how much is being sent back and forth. There's also where it's being sent from and to whom it's being received is kept private. And then everything from IP blocking and you name it. So when Bitcoin was launched, Bitcoin it's not a privacy coin, right? You can transmit peer to peer. It doesn't inherently mask IP addresses. It doesn't, and you know what? Instead of saying mask, I'll say it doesn't protect. Let's put it that way, right? Let's put it in the positive. It doesn't protect who the sender is. It doesn't protect who the receiver, the amounts that. So privacy coins popped up, along the way as people realizing, hey, there's very valid reasons that I don't want the world knowing who I am and how much funds I have, right? So if you think about it, Bitcoin being if you send somebody a Bitcoin, it's almost like writing somebody a check, right? And when that person deposits the check, they now have access into your bank account to see every in and out and how much funds are there. So you can think about, you don't really want your contractor or the milk lady knowing, oh, this dude's got, 400,000 quid, or a couple $1 million in his bank account. That's private information you just don't share with everybody, right? For very valid reasons. So privacy coins as a whole echelon popped up for whatever reasons they did, and a lot of them operate under this modicum of privacy as a right and ensuring that people have that right to choose what to share with and not it be a default. That's my version of what a privacy coin is. And then you can dig down into the tech and how that happens and the various ways projects attempt to provide that for their users.
Yeah, you've explained that well, actually. You've made that make sense. But Crypto C, I'm just going to ask you, is there any kind of downside to a privacy coin?
I would say From a legal point of view, it's not something that governments are particularly happy about. So we've touched on it in other episodes, but it does seem to me like when citizens do have privacy, it then means that you're in a situation where you're declaring what you feel like declaring. So as opposed to the traditional banking system, there is no means for any state to go into your privacy coin wallet and see how much money you've got or how much money you've made, whereas they can do that with traditional banks. So yeah, I think that would be the main downfall or the main drawback from a government point of view.
Right, I see what you mean. Okay, Snappy, back to you. What's your PIVX all about?
Sure. So, first of all, it's not my PIVX. I'm one part of it. Let's make that clear. Let's make that very clear. No, so PIVX is it's an acronym, and it's the coin itself. So it stands for Private Instant Verified Transaction. It was announced in around Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving, mind you. Our other Thanksgivings like Canada. So November. And then launched, and I'll explain what that means, and launched in January of 2016. So if you think about, like, in terms of the life cycle age of cryptos, this is could be considered like an old one, right? And in fact, it pretty much is. So when it was launched, it was announced on these forums and threads, which is what you used to do back in the day with crypto projects, is just announce what you were doing. And it was mineable, right? So what that meant is that anybody who had the right software or hardware could jump on and mine it. And now the algorithm that PIVX was originally launched with was one at the time was probably the best in terms of distributing power and not centralizing it into, the huge China mining farms that you hear about, or, the Icelandic mining farms where you or me, I shouldn't assume that you don't have mining farms, but the individual consumer or user is rarely not going to be able to compete, right? So what happened is that it transitioned over into a different algorithm called proof of stake. We could chat a little bit about the differences between proof of work and proof of stake, but the short of it is it basically allows anybody who at least has a simple laptop, computer, a super powerful Raspberry Pi even, to download the core wallet. And then as long as they have a single PIV in their wallet, they can stake, and I'll put that in quotes. And that means that they're able to participate in the potential of earning the block reward. So, yeah, there's a ton about what makes PIVX PIVX. It's based off of a manifesto, which is very human-centric, rights-centric as a human, without it becoming too philosophical or too religious or spiritual. It kind of says, hey, here are some, rights that humans have. And the crypto or the blockchain that is PIVX, the code base, is being designed and engineered to reflect those rights. So especially,
with all those things in mind that you've just said, would it be fair to say that PIVX is achieving everything that it's set out to do, to accomplish?
So achieving is a great way to put it. It's a continuum. PIVX is blowing away, I would say, crypto in terms of meeting its promises of what it would develop. In providing a technology that actually represents what it says it is. So providing privacy. It is the leader in privacy and proof of stake privacy, of maintaining people's anonymities and maintaining, those balances secure and safe for them. It's a leader in providing a very, very inefficient, or not inefficient, an inexpensive way to transmit funds back and forth. And it's seeking continually to lower that barrier of entry. Crypto can be very daunting for some people. And so PIVX is really focused on building a community as well, because again, you can have the best tech in the world, but without people actually using it, at the end of the day, what's the use case? So PIVX is also focused hand in hand on building this community network where there's humans interacting with the protocol. There's humans interacting with this technology and then talking about it. So that way you can go talk to your grandma, your neighbor about it, and it becomes more approachable. So have we attained everything? By no means. There's a lot more to be done in terms of the governance, how the community participates with the project, how the community voices its opinions that are then recordable and then actionable. We do have a governance system in place, and yet there's a lot more that is being developed to, I would say, distribute power back to the individual.
I suppose that would all come in time, I guess. Something that we ask all of our guests, Snappy, and Crypto C and I, in the first episode, went into this in a lot of detail. But it's interesting to get everyone's thoughts on this, really. The current legal climate, because we've heard that you might be in a unique position due to a recent trip that you've taken.
Yeah, so I believe you're alluding to my participation at the UN.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I had the privilege and honor of being one of, I think there's about 300 invitees, delegates to the UN, talking about its blockchain for impact. And a lot of the focus of the UN is exploring. This was so this was the inaugural meeting of exploring blockchains for impact and how blockchains and how distributed ledger technology in 2018 and beyond can be used to solve world problems and can be used to meet the growing, either demands or issues that we're facing to provide efficiency and beyond. So, yeah, it's there's a lot of legal stuff coming up. There's a lot of trepidation about what's going to happen, and even with privacy or privacy coins. What does that look like? And so forging relationships with lawmakers, with regulators, with individuals who might be hearing one thing, right? Because let's face it, when Bitcoin first came out, Bitcoin was heralded as, this is this token that's used for dark markets and it's going to corrupt our children and everybody's going to go to hell, right? Like literally mainstream media. Now fast forward and it's like, oh no, this thing's actually possibly useful and good, and there's a lot we can explore with it, right? So people are gonna push the agendas that are either told to them to push or their own biases. We all have them. So that is the beauty of having these relationships, is being able to talk with delegates and policymakers and influencers at these levels to spur up conversations about, hey, why does privacy matter, and why does a project like PIVX actually matter? Because it's delivering on its promises and it's providing a human and a real human, I would say, right code base, and then exploring then how can you work with the existing ecosystems of governments or banks or beyond, if they want to have conversations about, look, your model might not be working for the next 5 to 10 years. Guess what? There are technologies that will allow people to expand, and maybe you're going to create a whole new business model. It's not for me to tell them to change their business models. However, I can tell them and show them how blockchain's going to and already is empowering individuals. So yeah, it's I have been put into a unique position to speak on both sides of that.
No, it's good to hear your views on that one, because I think you're probably more qualified than most to talk about that. But it suddenly kind of jogged my memory there when you were talking about that. Is that I don't know whether you or Crypto C watch a show called Billions.
I've heard about it. I have not watched it, but yeah, I've heard about that. Right.
Well, it's a great program. It's very good. But the fact is, it's a mainstream program. This, and it's all about money. And suddenly in this series, which is the third series, or out in America's third season, crypto is actually involved in it, whereas in the previous two. But there's one problem to this. It's all talked about normally, but then the main character, he needs to pay somebody $1 million, but he can't have the government finding out about this $1 million, so he gives it to him in crypto. And that suddenly started ringing alarm bells in my head, thinking, hold on, so maybe that still is with these television makers and television producers and executives, they still think that actually crypto may well be a kind of in a world of criminality.
Yeah. So then that begs the question of why would why would anybody's, or, you know, we're not going to point fingers or name names. Why would anybody's want to put that forward? Or either they're misinformed as well. So that begs the question about
I think
education.
it's misinformed. I would have guessed it was misinformed.
Yeah. Well, and you look at the nexus of when Bitcoin came out. Sure, there are people using it for, you could say, unlawful activities. And I'll just put it that way, right? Things that have been deemed to be unlawful, these were being used as the means of commerce. Well, that doesn't make the technology bad. It doesn't make Bitcoin bad. I mean, quite frankly, take a look at what, you know, the pound has been used for, or the, you know, greenback Federal Reserve notes have been used for, right? How many quote unquote unlawful activities are those used for on a daily basis? So it's not that Bitcoin is in itself inherently bad or nefarious. It just provided a means outside of that monetary system for people to transact. And quite frankly, you know, I hate to say it, but to transact in a more efficient manner, right? Like, why would I want to take a horse and buggy if I have to be across the country in 2 days, right? Like, no, I'm gonna pop on my jet and fly across it. Same thing. It's like, if I'm going to be doing commerce and, you know, business, scratch the unlawful aspect, I'm gonna seek out the most efficient means. And that's what's happening, is people are going, wait a second, this is way more efficient. This is a more useful way to do commerce. And, you know, just we're going to then label crypto or Bitcoin as this nefarious thing just because the people who are the fringe pushers who are doing quote unquote unlawful activities are finding the most efficient means, right? So that trickle down effect then comes into media, and then grandma's talking about it, and she's, you know, giving you an earful because you're into this crypto thing. She's like, well, I heard on BBC that the Bitcoin thing is used by drug lords. And it's like, yes, it is. It's also being used by charities, right? It's also being used to track government spending, right? Like, there's both sides of that coin. So.
Absolutely. In Crypto C, I don't think that could have been put any better. Do you?
Yeah, no, I think he's hitting the nail. I think he's hitting the nail right on the head there. Yeah, crypto in itself, it wasn't actually developed to do bad things. It was developed as a direct response to the financial crash, 2008, 2007. So yeah, I'm all with Snappy there.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is not surprising, I guess.
yeah. Well, of course. And Snappy, you've mentioned like so many kind of positive things about PIVX. Can you single out, you know, maybe a best thing about the PIVX project?
The best thing about the PIVX project, and I'm going to use an analogy, it's the sum of the parts, right? So to use a human analogy, it's like, what's the best part about a person? It's the sum of it's everything that person is, right? Like, if you're in a relationship, your lover, your partner, your spouse. It's not one thing. It's that whole person that makes that person like, oh, I love you. So in the same way, PIVX is that, because there's so many facets and components of PIVX as an entire. It's an ecosystem, and not in the traditional one. Like, everybody talks about platform, like Ethereum being a platform, or EOS being a platform, right? And you can do all this stuff on it. Well, PIVX is an ecosystem. There's so many components, be it its tech, be it its community vibrancy, being its usefulness, that's what I'll say. It is the sum of it. And then that's the point of, you can then engage in conversations with people. Like, you know, I'm going to be hopefully at this, at a caucus down in end of June with a bunch of libertarians. You know, should be hundreds of thousands of viewers, attendees. And for them, like, this privacy thing matters a lot. But what also matters is governance. How do you make decisions and then act on them, right? Well, PIVX has both of those. Oh, and then you talk to somebody who's a vendor in South Africa, and they're like, dude, I'm getting killed on credit card transactions. And you're like, oh, guess what? You know, PIVX, you wanna do that? Yeah, your process less than a cent. What? Yeah, your transaction fees are going to be less than a cent if you use the PIVX network. Oh, okay. They don't care about the privacy factor. They don't care about how the governance is. They just want a tool that allows them to do what they want better. So that's, I could go on and on about the strengths of PIVX. So I will say it's the sum of the parts. And that's why, for anybody listening, a great resource that's actually spun up by a community member. It's called whypivx.com. Go check that out. I think it's 8 or 9 different bullet points, little snippets about PIVX, and really what makes PIVX a truly unique cryptocurrency.
But say that again, just so I can write that down.
Yep, whypivx, WHYPIVX.com.
Oh, as simple. All right, as simple as that. Yeah, I didn't need to write that down actually. Now I think you say it again. I tell you what, it's something that, just to pick up on something earlier, we were talking about kind of how PIVX, like anything really, will keep evolving over time. It can get better, just like everything can. What about, let's say, in 12 months' time? Where do you see PIVX being then?
It's.
You can give a different time scale if you want.
So
the next steps, I suppose, is what I'm asking.
Yeah. So the next steps. There's some incredible energies that are on the I'll say on the precipice of being solidified for PIVX. Everything from the ZDEX, which is a completely decentralized exchange within the core wallets. So what that means is that allows you to input a Bitcoin and you can back out a ZPIV, right? So you can put in this perfectly public ledger amount and you can directly convert in your wallet to a ZPIV, right? For fractional amounts. And, that way you can maintain your privacy. You can maintain your anonymity. You can maintain your rights and your freedoms from a financial liberty. And that's going to be in our core wallet, right? So that's a huge step forward for crypto. And then it's also a huge step forward for PIVX. There's work being done. There's 4 proposals and write-ups about governance. And I know so governance being, again, how you make decisions and then how you implement them. That's being revisited, and my hopes, and I'm starting to see it pick up again, is that the next step of community governance gets programmed and written into the blockchain. The other aspects, and I know that there's a soul on this call who's been very passionate about bringing crypto projects together. Right. So a lot of times what happens in the crypto realms is everyone goes back into their own, silos and spheres and doesn't cross pollinate. And so there's some beautiful alliance protocol and proposals that got passed about allowing other projects and to officially network and align with PIVX, and whether it's shared resources or whether it's mutually beneficial endeavors. So that's the next step, is seeing PIVX emerge from its own ecosystem into a networked ecosystem. And I know there's a bunch of really neat, initial proposals that have been put forward, and there's some more coming as well. So, I see PIVX. I also see PIVX as getting its shot again as a real viable cryptocurrency. I think 2017 people saw it as this incredible wealth vehicle. For a lot of people, it was one of the best returns for them in 2017, and so it was looked at as, this was just this coin that has no technology really behind it. Just was rose in price, and there you go. And then it has a bunch of crazy human people that are energetic talking about it. And so I think what's happening is the crypto spheres are realizing, whoa, there's actually a lot of viable tech and really useful tech, and they're pioneering. So I think it's going to find its solidify its spot as one of, if not the leaders in crypto tech and what it does. So
yeah, exciting times in crypto. It sounds from what Snappy was saying, Crypto C, that you can maybe pick up on that.
Well, I'm like beyond excited for PIVX for the next 12 months. I guess you can't really go any further than that, because 6 months is a lifetime. Everything is just developing so fast. So yeah, the next 12 months, like Snappy said, the ZDEX is coming out. The Alliance's protocol is probably a little bit more mysterious in that there's literally no telling what could come out of it. I'm hearing that there's a distributed VPN that are putting forward a proposal to make Dockers for the masternodes that will give them added privacy. So there are all these other crypto projects that are building things that we could be using and realistically should be using. And now we've got the means of starting to integrate them into the PIVX project. So, yeah, it's definitely a hugely exciting time.
Yeah, it sounds exciting. And Snappy, you don't just do PIVX, do you? What other projects are you working on?
Oh, catch out of the bag, eh? Yeah, so I think like many people in this crypto space, you wear a lot of hats, you do a lot of different things. So, as I said, I started an education technology company called WiseBridge 5 or 6 years ago, and we're in the midst of pivoting that. Also working on a holistic healthcare platform called 11. That's in its early stages as well, and we're looking to move into the crypto blockchain spaces with that. And then there's 3 others sort of projects, and they all tie together. And we don't have time to really chat about how they do, but one is called Decentrada, which is a festival exploring the decentralization of humanity and what that means, and actually the interdependence of humanity on one another, whether we realize it or not. So that's being formalized and finalized. It looks like it's going to kick off in November in Philadelphia this year. And then I'm also with a project called World Block as well. They're doing some really, really out of the scenes incredible work. And then the one that also keeps me grounded, literally, is my family and my wife really primarily is spearheading turning 5 acres of property into community gardens and a completely biodynamic permaculture farm to table type of community gardens. And so everything's being done by the community. It's all being worked on and developed to basically have it be a completely self-sustainable food forest. So that's the one where outside of the building, for the grand visions of the tech in the world, this is one of, the community. Hey, let's get neighbors involved and your friends and, their kids, and let's go play in the dirt and get rooted in that way. So
you're a busy man, Snappy. Crikey.
Just a bit.
Tell you what, there's time for a couple more questions. Still, you told us about like why PIVX and stuff, but where can people go to find out more about the other projects that you've been talking about?
Yeah, so it's actually, I'm going to be revamping my blog. So I have one blog up right now, website. I think it's brianwdoreian.com. And it's been a while since I logged in. That's how terrible it is. But as I said, I'm going to be cycling back to that and actually working on that a bit. And those will have all the projects that I'm listed on. You can find me on Twitter as well, Bryan Doreian. And then, I'm pretty public on Facebook. You can see all the projects and other things that I'm associated with.
Great stuff. Right, I'll find you on Twitter after this. So one final question. I mean, Crypto C might have a couple of questions as well. But this one, I don't mind if you can't or don't want to answer this one. But if you were to go, I'll word it as carefully as I can. If you were to go all in on a project, which would it be and why? But you can't pick PIVX and only projects that have already been released.
So are we talking about like a crypto project specifically?
Yeah.
Okay. And it has to be released.
Yes.
Oi, 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 oi. All right. So I'm going to use a story, and then hopefully that'll give me the wiggle room. I should have been a lawyer. So
I like the way you even explained it as well.
Yeah. So I was reading I was trying to get my daughter to calm down last night, and I was saying like, okay, like we'll read one book, okay? And she said, all right, Daddy. Well. She had all the books out in front of her. She's like, well, I'm going to do eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And that's how she was going to pick the book. And I was like, okay. So I walked away, and I could hear her kind of going like, eeny, meeny, meeny, miny, mo. And she's like, Daddy, I have a problem. I was like, what? And I was like, well, you don't have a problem. I said, what's going on? She's like, well, my finger chose 2 mo's.
She's a clever girl.
And I died. And I looked at her and the little glimmer in her eye, and I loved her in that moment.
You're so proud of her.
Yeah. And so, being the father, the good parent as where I'm like, well, Lily, we agreed to one book's what I said. And then she said, okay, Daddy, how about this? And she put her hands out kind of like the Godfather, right? Like a little bit of like, how about this? and she's never seen the movie in her life. I don't know if it's like a genetic thing. Like, she's negotiating, right? And she said, how about we read half of this book and half of the other? And I just was like, you're gotta be kidding me. This girl literally loopholed into getting both books read, but only half of them, but because half of a book and half of a book equals one book. Genius. So that's what we did. We read half of a book and half of a book. So I'll give you half of a story and half of a story. That was my long-winded intro to saying the two projects that I would go half in and half in on would be AdBank. So AdBank Network is the one. So AdBank.network is the one project. Their work and what they're doing is phenomenal. They are massively under the radar, but I know there's some incredible stuff popping up for them. The other is Sentinel. So SENT is their ticker. They are a VPN project, and they're also in that sort of privacy and digital security realm. So those would be the two that are launched and up and running right now that, I would go all in halfway on both of them.
But the thing is, Snappy, listen to that story about your daughter. It was a great story, but I couldn't help thinking that me and Crypto C with our kids, we would have just read both books. No doubt. you were far stronger than we would have been. After the two books, to be honest, if they wanted another one, they would have.
It would have been 4.
Oh, Crypto C, do you want to come in just to end anything with Snappy?
No, I think he's covered everything brilliantly. It's just, good to speak to him. I haven't spoken to him for a little while, so it's always a pleasure to speak to our Snappy. So yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Well, Snappy, from my point of view, great to speak to you. I thought, the way you answered some of those questions was really like you explained things so well. So really, really good to speak to you, and hopefully we'll speak. Well, we'll definitely speak again, but maybe get you back on Token TV Plus as well.
Absolutely. Tom, Crypto C, thank you so much for your time and for being you in this world.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Cheers, Snap.
Absolutely. Cheers.